6 months ago, I started developing a horror extraction game called Scavenge Protocol. I was heavily inspired by the games like A Little Company and Repo, but making a multiplayer game alone is a terrible idea. Because creating a multiplayer game from scratch is already complex, and when you're doing it solo, it becomes slightly insane. Especially if you're a kind of person who refuses to buy expensive assets because you think, this doesn't really fit in my game, which means I have to do all the modeling, game design, level design, and the coding myself. So naturally, the first thing I did was play other games. Like, a lot. If you want to make a game, you first have to deconstruct other games. Not in a very academic way, more like playing it like a complete maniac. That means you have to play it again, and again, and again. You die in the same place 20 times, but instead of getting angry, your brain starts thinking, okay, something here is working, which is exactly why games like this are so interesting. People don't play these games for perfect mechanics. They don't play them for graphics either. They play them because they want to have fun with their friends and terrifying situation. The best moments usually look like this.
It's time to go. Time to go.
Why? What?
Everyone is confused, everyone is scared, and someone is always screaming. That chaotic feeling of something is about to go wrong is what makes this game special. So I wanted to create something that keeps that tension, but also does few things differently. In Scavenge Protocol, the characters are just the robots exploring the danger zones. But instead of simple quota system, like many extraction games does, the core mechanic revolves around the energy. Your energy is everything. It keeps you alive, it powers your upgrades, it allows you to buy items. And if your team wastes too much energy, the mission can end very badly. So instead of just collecting loot, you constantly have to think about how you use your energy, which creates a different kind of tension during the missions. But designing mechanics is one thing, making them work in multiplayer is another. And that's where things start to get painful. Testing multiplayer systems when you're a solo developer is interesting, because I had to test everything using virtual machines, which meant build the game, send build to the virtual machines, launch Steam, create a lobby, test something, find a bug, then repeat the entire process again and again and again. Until I started questioning my life choices. But eventually, the lobby system started working, and once that worked, it was time to actually build the gameplay. Extraction games need a lot of systems to feel right. You need the item carrying, item dropping, flashlight systems, energy systems, death systems, and of course, the movement. Because for me, one of the most important things in the game is how it feels to move. I always loved games like Half-Life, because movement feels very free. So I wanted to add small parkour elements. Some rooms contain obstacles, some traps can actually be avoided if you move correctly, which makes exploration more interactive instead of just walking in the darkness. But of course, none of this matters if the world itself is boring. Extraction games also needs levels that feels different every time, so the game uses random room generation. For that, I used Unity tool called VM Dungeon Generator, created by Devlog. It saved a lot of development time, but creating a rooms inside of the editor could sometimes be slow. So later I switched to another system. I started to design my maps using a program called Tiled. Instead of placing everything one by one, I could draw a layout as a grid and convert it directly into the game. And honestly, I wish I had this idea earlier. In the end, I created more than 50 rooms variations. But of course, rooms alone are not very scary. For that, we need monsters. When I was younger, I had a PlayStation 2, and games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil absolutely terrified me. So I wanted monsters that feels disturbing in a similar way. For example, one creature behaves like a blind animal. It can't see the players, but it can hear everything. Another monster works similar to famous don't look away concept. If you look at it, it stops. You turn around, it moves. But instead of statues, I used mannequins, which are somehow even more disturbing. One of the strangest creatures in the game looks like a spider, but the interesting part is how it moves. Instead of using predefined animations, the creature uses an IK system for its legs, which means the legs attach to the nearby surfaces in real time. So the monster constantly adjusts its pose depending on the environment, and that creates some very unsettling movements. And finally, there is the mimic. It records the player voices and plays them somewhere else in the level. So sometimes you might hear your friend calling you from the other room, even though your friend is actually very far away. Which is not great for your sanity. And finally, we have the extraction capsule. This vehicle allows players to escape to the zone, but it's also much more than that. It shows the team's global energy value, it allows you to buy upgrades, purchase items, assign energy, and trigger extraction. So in many ways, this small machine becomes the central hub of the entire mission, which means the success of the run often depends on how your team manages it. This video isn't really about how the game was made, it's more about the strange journey of making a multiplayer game, alone, and somehow not losing my mind in the process. Or maybe I already did.